Yeah, I just turned my heater on just to warm up. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird weather right now. Heat waves and then everything's cold again. Okay, let me share my screen really quick. All right, here's our agenda. Today we have CCv4 election process discussion and brainstorming. Topic on subcircles, reality check and expectation management. Question about opening up the CC calls, and then next steps, align and coordinate. Does that seem like a good agenda for everybody? Anything you want to add, remove, alter?
I do have some slides that I'd like to run through, which is kind of part of election process and kind of sort of resetting. So I don't know, it kind of fits into the first item a little bit, but would love to have maybe 10 minutes to run through some of those, just to set the stage a little bit.
All right, maybe we can kick off with that since the election process and stuff is first.
That'd be cool.
Okay. Everyone else happy with the agenda as set forth?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's do it. Harris, you want to share and do your presentation?
Let's rock and roll. Okay. Folks can see that okay?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, no, I know we talked a little bit about regrouping in town hall yesterday. We certainly have an opportunity to write the rules the way we think it needs to be and make some adjustments the way we think it should be. You know, there's certainly a lot that we can work on together and iterate and experiment. You know, the 3-month time frame kind of, it makes it a little bit harder to to do rapid experimentation for sure, and we want to try to get it right, but you know, we do want to sort of decouple a little bit of the process tied to the fund itself. So just kind of reframing, regrouping. One of our colleagues, Chris and I, Mike McNulty, sort of came out with a pretty interesting presentation or brief on a possible method to run elections. He had some really great thoughts and insights, so I wanted to share some of those details. You know, it was great thoughts, and I thought it was really timely. So wanted to sort of step through some of the concepts that he presented. So the idea is that we could potentially run a voting event pilot, and you know, this would be special for Catalyst elections or Catalyst Circle elections, and it would take some of the pressure off of trying to race to get proposals and challenges in place. And the back end of our voting system uses something called Jörmungandr as a side chain to actually conduct the voting. And so we could run a potential pilot. But you know, so we need to try to promote legitimacy of the circle, and having a vote definitely helps move the needle and moves us in the right direction to just helps facilitate this transition of stewardship from IOG to the community, which is certainly an important tenet of some of the purpose of what the circle represents. You know, we do want the ability to run this with enough time and enough notice, and ideally enough nominations and things like that, so we're not feeling rushed. If we tried to squeeze this into this existing fund, we would have 2 weeks to try to throw all that together. I think that would be pretty fast, because for what I know, I have not seen proposals out there for seats, and we're trying to work on the definition of what a seat is. So that's something we can talk about. You know, so today, you know, we've got these different functional groups. There's no formal decision-making power. We're a human sensor array for elaborating and escalating and prioritizing issues by the community. You know, that's our current sort of state. In a mature state, potentially Catalyst Circle could serve as a governing council and helping to assist in making decisions on parameters, rewards allocations, and changes actually to the process. And this will actually help aid in this transition of stewardship to, from IoT to the circle, and really starts to form decentralization of Catalyst and Cardano, really ushering in Voltaire. So that's a potential future state. What we need to do is establish legitimacy, right? And so right now, I think our legitimacy has sort of been put in question, right? With sort of how we voted, who is voted in, how they're behaving, right? We want to reestablish that legitimacy and really make sure that we've got something moving forward. So voting is one part of it, having an official vote, making sure we've got enough people participating in voting. Voting numbers were really low in the past, 100 or so people voting and participating in electing folks to the circle. So by having an election in a proper way, potentially would facilitate the ratification of a circle and bring some legitimacy to what we're doing. So the goal, legitimize the members with a blockchain-based vote, make it more official, and then increase participation. This would be a stretch goal, maybe hard to sort of reach as sort of an idea. And this is just a proposal, and we're certainly open to discussion. This is not a specific recipe, but I thought this was so well put together. I really wanted to sort of share this with the folks. It can involve a number of different actions, in terms of nominations and sharing statements and bios, and actually learning about a special voting event and educating the community about that. Going through the process of registering, having seats available, casting votes for those candidates, and then getting into seeing the results, notifications, onboarding, and finding a mechanism of getting paid, for sure. So these are just some of the steps that would involve this special election process, particularly for the circle. So just a suggestion. There's certainly some research that we've had historically on the concept of holacracy, and we do have our very own Dr. M, who has definitely done some research in this regards, and sort of, I feel like some of the tone of sort of how you run the meetings, Nori, might be aligned with some of that thinking. But I do think that there's some good things that we can learn from that as a potential approach of these circles and subcircles. So I do have some general high level things related to that, but so maybe I'll just stop there. There's a couple of additional slides I could show related to potential proposals that we set out, but maybe I can pause here and we can go into discussion.
Okay, let's open it up. I see that Quasar has joined us in the meeting. I'm assuming that you're here representing the general ADA folder. Is that correct?
If that's required to observe the meeting, yes.
Okay, the admin team has been reaching out to the general ADA folder sub circle, and Quasar is one of them, and we're trying to figure out who will be representing them at these meetings. So with Quasar here, I'm assuming it's you. Since you joined after the start, I just want to rewind a little bit and just get a check-in from Quasar. How are you doing? And where are you at today? Just a quick 15-30 second check-in.
Oh, I'm great. Thank you very much. About to pick up my kid from school, so just dropping in to listen on the fly.
All right. So I shared earlier a link to the Miro board in chat. And if you all want to hop on there, there's a space just to do some brainstorming and drop notes and stuff, if that'll be helpful. But yeah, we can kick off the conversation. Joey.
Yeah, Harris, I'd watched that video on the sidechain voting. I can't pronounce the name of it, but at that point in time, it wasn't quite ready. Is it ready for the real
Jörmungandr?
world? Yeah.
We use it every time we vote right now. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Because what I watched was it seemed like it wasn't ready, but okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, there's certainly adjustments and improvements that are actively being made on the side chain, but that's how voting is being conducted now.
Okay, super.
Quasar.
If you wouldn't mind, would you mind resharing the link in chat? I'd like to grab it and take a look if that's okay. And I noticed that it looks like someone does have objections to me being here. So
once again, no objections, but just somehow communication. We are trying to do his stuff together. And just in this case would just be fucking awesome if Dimitri could just tell anybody, cool, Kaiser is the replacement. And people know, okay, cool, Kaiser is now the general elder holder rep, and they can reach out to you as well. But just bring people in, nobody knows what happens. I mean, this makes fucking no sense. I'm happy to have you here, Kaiser, but just the structure behind, I mean, come on. What is
yeah, the circle's really great about communicating. You're a very big, bright, open bunch of people, and you love sharing information and you love inviting people in, and it's really easy to find these meetings and these secret channels that you all talk in. I do apologize on behalf of the entire community for not being able to communicate with the circle or get your personal approval, Felix.
Also, once again, I don't want to make this a thing between me and somebody, but for example, on the very beginning already, in Catalyst Circle version 1, we said, okay, hey, how can we make somehow a deal? And this is until now, right? Between a conversation where you have a focus and where the people know, okay, they know they work with each other because they have to manage their shit somehow. And anyhow, but stay open to the community, right? And this is why we have after town halls, for example, where community circle members come, like yesterday, just for example, right? Where people can come, it is announced. People can come, people can speak to them. And I think it's not fair for me to draw this picture of secret channels of circle and whatnot. This is misleading, the whole thing here.
Yeah, it's not helping to add legitimacy to what we're trying to do here. Yeah, I definitely value your opinion, Quasar, but starting with that defensive stance is not cool.
We're getting a little bit off topic here, so maybe we can get back to the election conversation. And the admin team is reaching out and working with the general ADA holder subcircle to try to find out how they will be representing, and we're still midst that process. And so there is stuff happening in the background to kind of get clarity on that. But I would just recommend that we just move forward with the election conversation here and treat Quasar as the representative being sent by that subcircle.
Yeah, we certainly welcome any of your suggestions, Quasar, to make it better.
Thank you very much. My defensive stance was only because I find this very personal, and I'm very involved and committed to Catalyst. So I do apologize if it came across that way. And Catalyst Circle 1, if I'm not mistaken, from the very beginning with Governance Live, the goal was to set up an election process. So hopefully we can get that done sometime.
All right, so let's get back to the election process. Harris has provided some initial thoughts, a presentation. I guess I have a question. How ready is Jörmungandr for doing something other than idea scale voting? Is it pretty trivial to have a mechanism put into place to run a circle election? And could it happen before the end of Fund 9?
Yeah, the timing may be a little bit off in terms of the preparation of doing this, so it may need to fall into a separate process. You know, the chain certainly could be spun up to handle voting as its own event, So it's certainly on the table to try and race to get proposals into idea scale and run that in Fund 9. You know, it's also possible to decouple that and run it when it's ready as its own separate event. So again, I'm not saying either way is good. I just feel like we have a very short amount of time to try to legitimize a voting event to take place in the next 2 weeks. But it's certainly on the table if you guys are open to it, but we need proposals in place now.
Reese.
Yeah, a part of me thinks, right, the sooner the better, get it done. But like we've already hit the first soft deadline of submitting proposals. I know it doesn't really count this time around, which is a good thing, but like I feel like if we were gonna implement it, it needs to be ready to implement right from day one, so that everyone knows when people are there right at the first town hall. We can announce it, we can make a point of actually promoting it and give it the best opportunity, because otherwise we're just half-assing it. It won't work. Everyone will say it was bullshit, and then it won't be worth it, right? So I feel like, I know the previous voting setup was a bit of a disaster and creates all kinds of problems, but I think rushing it just for the sake of rushing it and getting it out in the next 2 weeks, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. I think we're doing the community a disservice there, to be honest. And I think there's like a better way we can go around it. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Joey.
Yeah, this is a question for Nadia. You have the voting process that you and Scott made, right? Would that, I mean, does it have to be secret? Does the vote have to be a secret vote? If it does, then Nadia's software wouldn't work, but I don't think. But if it can be open and who votes for who, then maybe her software would be something we could apply quickly. It's already in place. I don't know, just a thought.
That's a good
Are you
point.
talking about for a short-term solution for this gap here as an interim thing? Yeah, there's no anonymity to that. You're talking about the upvoting and dework, and I could see that could be a workaround, but I think that's all. It would prevent the anonymity. It would be like a serious workaround of the use of that, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, there's multiple things to discuss here. There's like, we're talking about an idea scale election. So that's one option. 2 is a secondary thing using Jörmungandr and creating a separate process, still voting on chain, but not tied to the idea scale process and timing. But there's also, like it's been mentioned before, about different circles appointing their own representatives. And if that could be an option for legitimacy, if there's a strong subcircle like the CAs, and the CAs can somehow within themselves figure out how to appoint somebody to be the circle rep, that is an option that legitimizes, like the CAs decided among themselves who's going to represent them, whether it's through an election or consensus or however they do it. That can also be an option, or some mix. Like groups could opt into the larger voting mechanism, or they can decide they want to self-appoint. I don't know. I would love to brainstorm these ideas just so that we kind of talk about what's possible here. Chris and then Harris.
I just wanted to know what the software solution was that Nadia had proposed. I'm obviously just catching up on some of these prior discussions, so anything that I can look at would be awesome.
Yeah, so it's not designed. What we have there is in the server, we created the opportunity to put up different issues that were sensed in dework, so that, and then they can be upvoted. So they're listed there, they're sort of sensed across Fund 8, they were put up there as different dework suggestions, and then people can upvote on them, and then as they're prioritized, then they can be created into prioritized problems. So it works great for that function. It's been fantastic to have it work there, but I can see all kinds of issues that might pop up with that. It's not really designed for that. So in order to upvote, you need to both be in a Discord server and be able, and you wouldn't have anonymity because you use your in order to prevent only multiple votes per person, you'd only have one person per vote.
Yeah.
And in doing that upvote, I don't think that I love that you're thinking outside the box, Joey, but I don't think that's a temporary solution for this here in terms of having an election with using those tools.
Harris and then Joey.
It certainly has some nice capabilities in terms of attaching wallets and or your Discord sort of account to it. So it has a lot of amazing capabilities for sure, but yeah, there may be some issues. One of the things in the concept of holacracy as a whole, it's certainly all based on circles, subcircles, circles, and circles, and certainly the concept of inviting others, inviting the circle or having the circle invite others into their subcircle is totally cool. But there are specific roles as a role-based kind of approach where you would actually have an election for a specific rep or a lead within a circle. So it's sort of this combine of circles and people inviting others that they know into the circle, into their circles. But there's still a sense of a head that is, has certain responsibilities or has a role within that subcircle, if you will. So it's a concept to think about. Maybe there are elected, people within a circle. Something to consider.
Joey and Nadia.
Yeah. Well, in my world where I work and live, which is a fraternity, when a position is vacated prematurely, we appoint someone temporarily until someone can be duly elected. And that has worked for 100 years and it's effective. And I believe Nadia in her diagram showed that they could actually appoint someone to sit in the chair of the circle and maybe even rotate a couple of people. And the value of that is they get to experience it, and maybe one of them will actually run for election. I know one of my sub-circle folks that had run, I think, against Mercy in the beginning. He's considering running. So I find value in them having that experience. And then maybe the official election would be prepared for. Yeah. Some idea.
Enjoy Reese and then Mercy.
As far as I'm aware, what's happening right now is there's up to 100 people voting on a very designated time. Yeah, it's anonymous, but that's the only value that it really presents. Like there's no, it always causes problems. I was voted in by I think 20 SPOs. Like I'm grateful for it, but it's not really representative of 3,000 plus stake pools, right? So I really think any solution, anonymous or not, is irrelevant. I mean, there is ways you could gamify it, but right now, all you have to do is get 20 of your mates to turn up and vote for you and you're in, right? So it's not really a good solution that we have now. So any solution, anonymous or not, I think is better than what's in place right now. And if we can figure out something super simple, like Occam's razor, whatever's the easiest to implement that can be put in place right now is the best solution for us to move forward. And we can worry about iterating it. We can worry about taking it on. As long as we're all committed to pushing it forward, then it will improve and we will do it. What's happened so far is it's not been tested. We haven't made any iterations. We've not done any changes. And so we don't know what could be better or what could be worse. We just need to start iterating and start getting it done as soon as possible, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Reese. Mercy and then Joey.
Yeah, just to quickly chip in terms of appointing into subcircles and groups. I know that there are only a selected group of people that has done this in this V4, and yeah, I just want to make a point that when we hit the ground, we are sort of running, so there is almost no time to go through elections and such. In the funded proposal group, what we did was just to look at the regional representation, sort of in terms of the town halls. So that's another way, because within the town halls, there's a lot of elections and how do I put it, democratization or distributed decision making that can be made. So I don't know if everything should really boil down to elections, because yeah, that can take quite a bit of time. And when I say everything boiling down to elections, what I mean is in the subgroups or in the subcircles, if we want to call it that. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. That sometimes there is, there's a bit of order in the disorder.
Thanks, Mercy. Joey, then Felix. You're muted, Joey.
I just want to add what Reese was talking about. Now, in my circumstances, when I ran, I would have had a vote of one, me, because I didn't know anyone in the community, but June knew people, and she asked them if they would review my profile and see if they were willing to vote for me. And that was the only way I was voted. And even that ended up, and Felix can attest to this, it ended up being like a tie. And fortunately, Aaron, he had a project going that was funded, and he was kind enough to say, just step back for this time. So I look at, especially with Nadia's seat and Mercy as well, if she decides not to stay, that community is so engaged and there's so many people. If Nadia appointed someone to be temporary until an election, I could almost 99% guarantee you that would be the person elected, because they have such an engaged community over there. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Okay, just to summarize what I'm hearing from a few people is you're agreeing with the point that some stronger subcircle communities probably have the ability to self-select a representative, maybe not even using an election mechanism, through some kind of consensus mechanism. Felix, and then Chris.
Maybe we could even get some really nice opportunity out there as well, because I think it's all about experimenting as well. And honestly, since Circle version 1, there wasn't really innovation or experimenting. And we see that groups like the PAs and VPAs, they definitely have the capacity to set up people from their own groups, but others maybe not. The SPOs, for example, might be totally different situation already. So why not say, just let's try it out. Everything is better what we had before. So the Google form to vote. Why not simply say, oh, okay, for those who feel themselves they are able to do so, like the PAs, VPAs, let's just try it out. And for those who don't, just go the simplest way, like Harris proposed already via ideal scale, capturing both sides, figuring out what works best. And when something works well, we will win everything anyway. So it's just moving away from the Google Forms and the live Zoom call, I think.
And I love being able to have that optionality. Maybe each sub-circle group could decide, like, we want to do the election because we feel voting is important, or they will say, we've got this, we'll send somebody to the next circle.
Just a last point, I wouldn't make it such a long story, because if we want to prepare something for the next funding round, we still have 2 weeks to submit any challenge, for example, if you want to. So we would need to check fast. But maybe then asking the PAs and VPAs at first already, hey, do you feel safe and fine to take it on your own and figure out how you want to select your representative? But however, the challenge should be submitted then soon.
Chris, and then Nadia.
Probably a little bit redundant now, but I just wondered whether anybody had a strong view on why it needed to be private as a vote. Okay.
Democracy.
Main point behind was to say, okay, you don't want that much to nurture, let's say, click building and whatnot, right? So if you know this people voted for this person, then you have it quite rapidly that they go then into the stripes and put names to votes. It's dangerous, right?
Yeah, I understand that, but it's a circle position as opposed to a significant amount of resources to go and build your startup. So I'm just questioning whether or not we require a private vote, and this is hopefully about competence and people having confidence in someone being able to represent their tribe, right, in the group that they're or the candidacy that they're putting themselves up for. So yeah,
That's a good point.
it's a different thing.
I'll raise two things. One of the things was, so I am for elected people. So I think that's an important thing, that there's a voice here and not an appointment. I can't imagine how it would go about appointing someone, or how the community would go about appointing someone. It would have to be weighed in upon. So I think that's important. Also, I think it's important that like the structure of the subcircles, that the FP subcircle and the PA subcircle, super different. So that even though we're calling them the same thing, like you guys wrote a proposal, got the proposal funded, and appointed people into those positions. Whereas subcircle within the PAs is more like, these people are particularly engaged, but there's not like someone who names you a subcircle member, right? And there's not like an official, it's more responsive. So it would really be just those who are very involved within the community would have to come together and sort of think about this and decide it, rather than being a body at this point, unless a group formed around this issue. That would be sort of how the structure would be for us. All that said, if the anonymity of voting is not an issue, which I can see how it would be, but I think sometimes we lean too hard in Catalyst on like preventing the downsides without balancing that with the upsides. Like Tommy, Philip, and I went up for that together, and the community, there was like a sentiment from within the community that we couldn't lose, because all those candidates would be great, and we ended up working closely together anyway. And so did people who necessarily were sort of admittedly more for one of us than the other of us, and that came out afterwards, and it didn't really matter because we're all working together. So I think there's a lot of, if it's not an anonymity of vote issue, I think that is an intermediately pretty easily solved thing. You could easily do that with polls or Discord, and that would also solve the async thing. Like more people could vote because you wouldn't have the structured set time, which was a complaint and an issue for V3. And you could give it a window of hours. Everyone would have one vote, and you could spread that more widely. To Quasar's point about distribution of information, we could really take some time to do that and let people have time to raise their hands for it. So I think that for the rep role. I also, so just to report on I took that subcircle out. It got very mixed response. There were a lot of different opinions on it for having a distributed representation, but I think there's a lot there. I don't know. I guess it depends on how much flexibility here there is for us to make adjustments, or if we need to adhere very strictly to things that came before us. And the last thing I'll say is that whatever we're moving towards, it would be nice to demonstrate some of those aspects here. So for Harris's initial presentation, we had like glimpses of opportunity. It would be nice to embed some of those really key ones that we want to see happen into any of these sort of intermediate solutions that we come up with.
Thanks, Nadia. Harris, and then Reese.
That's great. So some of the benefit, or one of our goals in Catalyst in general, is to try to increase participation in governance. We want more and more people to participate. I do think the danger of having it as a public vote, which is it that important or not? For this particular use case, may not be that important. I would agree. But if I see like, oh yeah, there's an election and Mercy, it's a landslide for Mercy, so I'm just not going to vote because she's already going to win. Why does my vote matter? So that's the advantage of having it private, sort of for that window. So we want to be inclusive, right, as much as possible, and make sure everyone's voice matters and your opinion matters. And so it's certainly something that we can sort of work towards. I do think fundamentally, we need to decide, what are we electing? Are we electing seats? are we agreed that, these are the seats that we want, SPOs and funded proposers, and, are we all going to have subcircles? Is there going to be a tool makers and maintainers subcircle? Are these all going to be different? I mean, they certainly can be structured separately, for sure. But it does sound like there's a sentiment that somebody from the circle would be elected, right? And then, I think the whole intent and the beauty, I think, of what, Mercy and yourself, Nadia, have done is, you've pulled in all these other great people to support you in subcircles, which is fantastic. But there was still an elected person, right? And it could be a few people, but we should decide if we want to run an election, what are we electing? And is that a one rep that is the a person that's contributing in the circle? And ideally, they don't have any more power or any power within their own respective circles, but they are an elected position, and there could be a few. I can talk more about the concept of holacracy, but it's just a framework, certainly not prescriptive at all, but just an idea where we can take learnings where they are electing a facilitator, a secretary, a lead link, and a rep link into that role, and then anyone else that wants to participate in that circle can be pulled in from those parties. So just as a framework, we need to come to terms with what are we running an election for.
Good point, Harris. And I would like to just make sure that we stay on topic. If we're talking about elections, I think it is important, who are we electing and what are the seats on the circle? But I have a feeling that could be a separate topic as a side to the election mechanism, because I think once we have a mechanism, we can decide who we're electing, unless it really is critical, because I don't want to derail this too much. I know Mercy only has an hour with us, and we have a short amount of time to elect the next circle, and there could be conversations around if a group of 50 come together and they want a seat, is that possible? And that could be a whole other side conversation. And I just want to make sure we figure out the election piece first, and then if we can evolve into who are we electing after that.
So from the discussion so far, I think we have three options, at least, and it's certainly open to others. So going down the path of a D-work sort of route, which may be a nice intermediate approach between a Google form and voting inside of Zoom windows. There's certainly the option to fire up challenges for each seat and then have people submit proposals and sort of nominate themselves, and get that done in the next 2 weeks. As a second option. And then the third option is trying to decouple, the timing, and when we're ready, when we have nominations ready, run a special election specifically for those seats. So I think we should decide fundamentally which approach we'd like to take, or others that people have suggestion. We haven't heard from you, Quasar, if you have better ways to do this also.
I don't know that I have better ways to do it. Alternative options, maybe. I would say I'd like to just continue with the conversation. I don't want to add too much in here. There is the Hazelnet bot, which is still limited to Discord. But to Nori's point, I think my mind already shifted from the conversation, so I'm just going to refocus back in on what we're doing here.
No worries.
Thanks, Quasar. Joey and then Felix.
Yeah, let me just get back here. So a couple of thoughts is, for me, appointing someone right now as a circle stands as a listening thing with no power is fine. Eventually, when it does get authority, then I think the election process is much more important at that point. And I definitely recall, Felix, at some point there was another organization that demonstrated a voting process in one of the sworn videos, but I just don't remember off the top of my head what that organization was. But I don't know. That's it.
Thanks, Joey. Felix.
On the was also in Catalyst Circle version 1, we introduced bchainify, but yeah, was I think this was the one you mentioned showing. But there already, yeah, there was a certain pushback, and there already the idea came up from Victor Cosino that, hey, why not using idea scale and challenges to vote? There was a whole conversation about. But anyway, also say the whole process, how we come to this decision. I tried yesterday, this week already to just in the Slack channel, CC Slack, to ask, hey, could we have a circle after town hall? Because I think maybe topics like this, we could bring to the community, have some feedback there as well, and let them decide, and we can come back and represent what they come up with. So to have a little bit more community involvement in this whole process here as well. It wouldn't cost that much, right? But just, yeah, maybe. And last point, to DWORK, I think DWORK is difficult because it has to be linked to Discord. And there's a reason why we have Telegram and Twitter communities. They don't like Discord. I don't want to come to Discord. So I don't want to say that idea scale is a better solution, because idea scale kind of sucks. But I think it's the best next step maybe. And to say, hey, maybe we can really focus on, hey, having 2 experiments running, once checking with the PAs and VPAs, if they would be able maybe to like something with the subcircle and defining the process by themselves, and next to it we have the channel challenge.
Thanks, Felix. And I think it is important to look at the pros and cons of the different platforms. And I know that idea scale is where the entire community votes for proposals. So it's a tool that everyone who would actually care knows how to use in some way. So that's a really good point against using DWORK and Discord. But yeah, I would love to hear other opinions around the tooling pros and cons, or the options that we're kind of boiling down to kind of 3 idea scale DWORK, or decouple it, or if there's any other options. Nadia, and then Joey.
I have to agree with that. There's also a lot of people who are on Telegram who are on Discord and vice versa, and it's hard to make a tool kind of universally inviting. That's probably true for idea scale too. It's probably true for any tool. We're gonna, people have to sign up for Zoom if they want to come to these meetings. So I know you can really extrapolate that out pretty far, but I'll also just throw out the idea as a temporary solution that there's 2 other candidates besides me. In my case, we could go to Phil and they're voted on people. Perhaps there's interest there. There's a consensus of that there. I'm getting a from Felix, so I don't know, but I have to agree on the tools. I have to throw my hat in the ring there. I do think that if, for me personally, in my position, I think that I really, really like the idea of doing an after town hall and letting people weigh in on the idea for the ideas for how we do the vote. Because here we're 9 people, but it would be great to have lots and lots of minds thinking about it and coming up with different ideas than the ones we came up with, and being actually a part of that, being that part of that process. So I forget what else I was going to say. That's it.
Thanks, Nadia. Joey.
Yeah, on Felix's idea and the after town halls, maybe Harris, I'm going to ask you, during the town hall where they do the circle presentation, maybe you could mention something about the elections, and some place where people who have intention to run could at least put their potential for running, because I'm thinking we might be having an election and nobody wants the seat because it's not funded and there's been a lot of controversy. So I would like to, I mean, we're going to go through a lot of processes, but it'd be interesting if we could get a sampling if there's actually interest in the seats themselves.
Thanks, Joey. I think that brings up a side question outside of the election process is, how are reps compensated, and does it evolve to where subcircles figure out how they're going to pay people and distribute that responsibility out to the community rather than kind of centralize it to the circle itself or the admin team or whatever. I think that's a really great conversation to have. Nadia.
I certainly do have some thoughts on that, and I actually have a couple slides I can show, but please go ahead, Nadia.
I have to take my hand down, sorry.
Yeah, I think Nadia just forgot that she was talking still. The only thing I was going to add was that the after town hall is a great idea, but you get a very select sample of people who are heavily involved. And a lot of the times people in this group can't attend those things, especially me, as an example. And so you get such a very concentrated sample of people who usually are already working in some form within Catalyst. So they have very strong opinions on certain things, but it doesn't really represent the group of Cardano very well. And the other issue with that is that it's a week behind our meetings, which is literally the worst timing, because anytime we decide to do that, which is what we saw in the last fund, is that we decide on something and then we have to wait a week for feedback, and then we have a discussion about what we're going to do about it, and then we have another week before we get feedback from the community again, and that's just not a very good process for communicating with the community. That was one of the biggest problems that we had. Even just with something simple like the code of conduct, it took us almost 2 months to get anywhere with it. No fault of Harris or anyone, but it's just very difficult to get a lot of that feedback from the community without when we rely on the after town halls. I don't think that's the best process to work around. I don't know what is, but I just don't think that is particularly very good.
I will quickly jump in here to support Riss in the sense that the town hall that we have on Wednesdays, it doesn't really work for everyone. It doesn't work for the Eastern bloc, and also I think that there's some issue with the with the LATAM group as well. So I think that we need to figure all that into play.
Thanks, Mercy. Harris, and then Joey.
Yeah, definitely think we need to decouple it from town hall or town halls, because I think there's a lacking participation, if we just keep it to that. I wanted to just not going too far into this. I've got this, I'm going to go right into another slide, which I think is salient for the discussion. But in general, circles should form their own subcircles or groups within them. People can pull themselves in. If we have seats in a couple of elected people or one elected person per se, and not suggesting even this approach is perfect either, but just a suggestion of circles and subcircles, since we're having that conversation, that might be relevant. So if I look at what we need to do short term, number one, we've never had a specific challenge to handle governance, right? So we did not get funding, I think, in part because we didn't really have the proper home to put a proposal. I think that was part of the problem. So I think in the short term, we should put in something as a Fund 10 Catalyst Governance Challenge, right? So people can make suggestions, we can get ideas from the community, right? Something that I think is important. Maybe we put out the idea of a Catalyst Circle Governing Council, and we try to ratify and give legitimacy to put a proposal out there in some category to see if folks want Catalyst Circle to make decisions, right, on things like that. We could also race and put out there, a subcircle seat proposal. So, here's the PA, seat potentially that would be there, that's run by subcircles, right? That could be something we could race to put out there and actually run it like an election, just within idea scale. The way it is now, there would be a short window for folks to participate. But if we do this right now and we decide right now and put those proposals in ASAP, and get the word out, potentially we could have people nominating themselves as proposals under that. If that doesn't work, potentially we could shift it into this separate vote at a different time. So that you're using that voting pilot concept. But also one of the things, we want to also investigate is possibly creating a parameter in Catalyst that pays for the circle members the way we do for challenge teams, right? So we want to bring legitimacy to that concept that, okay, maybe we are going to take treasury funds, a certain amount, you know, whether that's 1,000 per quarter or 2,000 for the six months, something of that nature as an initial thing. And maybe we put out a proposal to see if folks would bite on that, or we work towards actually making that decision of just adding that as a parameter, which is sort of what IOG has done, you know, historically in creating a challenge team budget and trying to issue that. We could just add that as a potential parameter to Catalyst. But this is another reason we don't want it to be an IOG decision. We want it to be outside of IOG, and this is where we need somebody that is going to make decisions on Catalyst parameters, and that's the thrust of why we would like that in some kind of body, possibly the circle and or other groups that would help make those decisions on parameters. So just some ideas on something we can do in the short term, get them in idea scale now, whether that's ratification of the concept or whether that's pushing the vote really hard. We need to decide now, and otherwise we're not going to have that option.
Thanks, Harris. And just to put it out there, I did put in a Fund 10 challenge setting called governance as a placeholder, anticipating this. So it doesn't have much in there yet. So it's totally open for collaboration, and we can build that out as a group if that's something that the circle wants. The admin team was also wanting to help contribute to that. And really,
Awesome.
The idea was governance as an experiment. And it's not just for the circle. It's open for the community, for subcircles or other governance experiments. And it would be great to see what ideas people have. All right, Joey and then Nadia.
Yeah, as far as communication, I think Danny has it figured out. I mean, he knows how to communicate with everybody in the community. And if we need to communicate something out about the election or ask people to run for the office, it may be a good resource of getting the message out to everyone at one time. So just that with the thought versus the town halls. The other thing, a little bit off the subject, but as far as the funding goes, I mean, this is a little bit of a wild idea, but maybe there could be a little addition to the voting app that says, hey, if you want to donate to a Catalyst treasury that could pay for all this stuff, you could vote, you could voluntarily donate 1 to 5 ADA, and you have 50,000 wallets. Maybe over a period of several funds, you'll get enough money into an SPO or a treasury that we could actually fund ourselves. But that's just a wild off the cuff thought.
Nadia and then Chris.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a few things. There's the urgency, right? So we need to make the decision here, and that's something. Certainly there should be a governance challenge, because we're all kind of doing here. And with enough space to encourage diverse proposals. So I totally agree with that. Yeah, and the agreement with the using the after town halls, from my perspective, was it's less about it's important to decide about the mode, but it's less about the after town halls and more about how do we seek feedback on the voting process overall. Back and forth in the chat for the recording's sake is stuff about the poll.is. We did that for the code of conduct. It might be really nice to see that with like 10-ish questions about the voting process, about governance, about things that are requesting feedback, and then to really get the distribution of it right. So it wouldn't have to be, we have the questions, we're asking them here, right? So it's not like we have to come up with a whole lot. The questions are specific, and then you could get both feedback and perhaps additional questions that were added there that would both show us themes around engagement, around governance overall, and around the circle, and do a better job of helping understanding. The third thing I would say is that I think we still have quite a long way to go. So the desire to be as broadly inclusive as possible is really important, especially for voting, but also for educating people about what they're voting about. And if there's this much question about the circle's function as well, or the direction it's going, or whether there's a plan for that, or whether we're even talking about that, those things I think are part of the same coin, the other side maybe of the coin, the education and the inclusion. And so when I say education, I mean, we need to have an open dialogue around where this is going and what its purpose is and what its value is, and also get people's feedback on whether that is the case. So a lot more of a conversation, especially as we're coming to a point of elections where people are going to have to participate in something that they need to have a say in at the same time.
Really good points, Nadia. Thanks. Chris, and then Joey.
I'm going to put forward a counter to some of this. So if the objective for this meeting is to discuss legitimacy, if we were to put a governance challenge up that is broad in scope and that invites anybody to submit a proposal for, and I'm using this as a really silly example, right? We might get voted for to then for the next 3 months have to wear pink hats every time we turn up, right? And what I mean by that is, if we're trying to create structure and we're trying to create buy-in for the community around what it is we're trying to do, then if we get a whole load of submissions and then proposals get voted for over the outcomes that we think are reasonable for the next 6 to 12 months, and it pivots away from, you know, the intention of what it is we're trying to do, it's going to be quite difficult to then maybe come back from that, right? So the structure of these ideas of circle can change quite dramatically just from the case of someone putting in a proposal that, catches wind, right? I think diversity is really awesome for apps and projects and solutions to sort of funding challenges. I think I'm not wedded, I'm not bought into the idea of it being a great way to ratify structure. Where we could, I think, maybe put some guardrails around this would be to limit the scope of what could be submitted as an idea, or potentially who could submit an idea, so that, you know, we don't end up drastically changing the function and the structure of what the intention of this group is meant to be for. You know, that's my sort of thoughts and feelings. I just look at the risks and can see that there's a significant risk in, taking an open approach to thinking about how, or a totally open about how we want to make decisions on what it is that we think this needs to be and how it needs to operate. If it's just a vote for the elections, then maybe that's one thing. But then to crowdsource, many different ideas which could really dramatically change how it operates and functions, there's quite a big risk and trade-off to be mindful of.
It's a good viewpoint, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. And I think there's opportunity here for both and. Like, it doesn't have to be completely open and to the winds. It could be the circle operates as a circle as it's intended, and these are just additional ideas like CGO or an audit circle or the admin team or these community initiatives to add to the experiment of governance and not to direct how the circle itself operates.
Just one final point. I think the idea of a governance challenge is great, but my vote would be a very limited scope on what it needs to achieve. What's the outcomes and the objectives and the outputs that we can imagine?
Mm-hmm. I think that's the key part of any challenge setting, is to set those parameters for the challenge team to help steward that challenge. Joey, and then Reese.
So back to the concept of voting. I like the idea of your specific role voting for that person that's going in the seat rather than a broad community vote, because just like with my local township, the people in that town that are affected by that vote get to vote. We don't ask people in Arkansas to vote for people in our township. And I think it's a lot more beneficial that the people that are in that community focus on who they want to represent them. And right now, again, since we're just a censor, don't have any power and authority. Until we can have a real election, I'm not opposed to appointing someone until we can have an election. But if we put stuff in the catalyst, I think the election isn't going to be for weeks, right? So So what do we do? We're going to sit with a vacant seat until then. So thoughts?
Yeah, I do think there's short-term backfilling potentially, and then there's the CCv4 election, maybe two separate topics. I think we're talking about the CCv4 election.
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification. Reese and then Felix.
Yeah, sorry, I had to turn my camera off because I was having a meeting. But I completely forgot what I was going to say, to be honest with you guys. But I like that everything's moving. I wish Quasar had some input because he's got a lot of things to say in the chat, but he hasn't. I don't know if he's available to actually talk, but he has some really good ideas with using stuff that other people have used in other communities to kind of test. We can be running multiple tests. We can all run tests within our specific communities. And I think this is a really good opportunity to act fast and make these quick test decisions and see what happens, and, maybe we mess it up, but I think at least one of the groups is going to get it right. And they're going to get it really, really good. And it could be something that we could template across all of our communities very easily and make a massive improvement very, very quickly.
Thanks. Quasar, do you want to jump in since you haven't been in the queue for a bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Reese really summed it up. Basically, I don't know what you were referring to specifically, Reese, but the Hazelnut bot is really amazing. I think Freeloaders even has something that works pretty well. My concern with these things is the Telegram maxis, and then those that just don't use either and stick to IDiscale or the forum. It would be great if we had a couple of options to all iterate within the groups. And regarding the challenge, I know this is about the circle voting, but the governance challenge thing, Nadia, the principles of governance worksheet or form that Scott and Sim and all tried to get complete. I mean, that was like pulling teeth. I think people have trouble understanding that they have the authority, the ability, and the right to define what principles of governance are. But I'm afraid none of us have ever been asked that question, and we don't know how to answer it.
Thanks, Quasar. I think that's a really good point. That survey went out as broad as we could broadcast it, and I think 24 people responded. So it was an interesting kind of result, both from participation as well as what came out of it. Felix and then Nadia.
Also, just to coming to the last point on the agenda, to have some clear actions. Can we make this as a clear action for everybody? Say, okay, let's have a focus already on the challenge and the challenge proposal. Just note it down and know that everybody is up to date to push it forward.
I think that's a good step. I would like to also nail down for the election, what are the next steps? We've talked about after town hall, but that perhaps isn't the only inclusive option. So maybe we can do a both and add a polis poll or some other mechanism to get as broad input as possible. But we also need to move quickly, probably, or at least have a message that we have a plan for Circle V4 and this is the timeline. So I would love to also work backwards from what's the drop dead date for Circle V4 being instated, and then how do we work backwards from that date to make sure we have a process in place and the elections happening at the right time, whether or not they're tied to idea scale or to some other mechanism. Nadia, you had your hand up.
I think moving forward to answer those things is more important. It was more like sort of logistical comments. So let's keep going.
Reese.
Yeah, someone was mentioning Danny earlier. Danny is the person who is known for Catalyst. So let's just abuse Danny, right? Abuse his position within the community. Let's use it. He'll be more than happy to do it. He's very committed to Catalyst. He can put a Telegram announcement Discord announcement, Twitter announcement, and he can talk about it in the town hall or whatever. He can get us to have a position in there in some form, which will raise awareness very, very quickly. It'll create a crazy discussion. We'll probably have some fighting in the street about people's different opinions and stuff. It'll be crazy. It'll be a great time. We'll hopefully get a solution submitted. We'll be able to get some kind of voting, some kind of participation quickly, right? If we're talking about moving fast, we need to be able to reach a community. And I think that, I can't remember who said it, but they were bang on point. That is the easiest way to reach everyone. And we can reach everyone in every channel. You know, we don't need to direct everyone to a single channel. What we need to do is just find out a simple process of broadcasting a message to everybody to increase participation as much as possible. And realistically, we have 3, maybe 4 channels, and we're going to have to do them all. You know, we're too, like, everyone goes on about the decentralization, right? With things like this, it's a problem because it's hard to communicate with everyone. So we just got to know that it's going to take 4 channels. You know, we're going to have to do Twitter, Discord, Telegram, Reddit. Like, if that's it, then let's just do all of those. Yeah, but we can put the same message everywhere. It can still be 280 characters, you know, and we can just get participation quick. And sorry, Danny, but you've got to hit send. But I think that's the best way to get it.
No one beats up Danny. No, we're going to protect Danny with our lives. So Danny's amazing. Yeah, it's a great suggestion. We certainly can get it out broad and wide. But what is the message we want to deliver?
There have been 2 suggestions so far. One is to hold an after town hall. And then I've also heard we should create a polis poll. Are there any other options that we can do to get the message out and get participation?
Is this for V4 elections? So let me ask this question. Is the solution with the Dimitri seat that Quasar is taking it? Like, are we not holding an election and that's just an appointment? And then is there consistency? Because this is like a question mark here as well. So, because I can come back to everyone and say, okay, we didn't decide to go this route. It's open. What do you guys want to do? And have them form around and make suggestions and then come back with a solution. That's a thing that could happen. But you know, that could also go on for 2 or 3 weeks, right? So, or is it, here's an appointment? What is the solution for filling seats that we have right now? And then I think none of that would be included in the V4 stuff, which is what we're talking about here, right?
Right. And okay. I think that's a good point. And currently we don't have any procedure around what happens if somebody steps down. It's never happened before. So we don't have the plans or the staffing to hold another election. Like, admin team didn't get funded. Who's going to run the election? So those kind of things are huge questions. So if everyone's okay with appointment, then that could be the message. But if we want to have special elections in the meantime, then that's a whole other thing, a side conversation to the V4 election. Before I jump in to Joy, does anybody have any strong objections to the appointment model for the interim, so that we have Quasar sitting interim general ADA holder? And then I know, Nadia, you announced your resignation. So if you don't continue, whoever comes from your subcircle.
Who is doing the appointing? Because I don't have a subcircle like Mercy has a subcircle. I have a group of involved people. So is it they put their hand up and I say okay? Or is it you guys want to say okay? Or how do you want to? I don't want it to be me is what I'm saying. Number one, I think it's important. I think it should be a consensus from either one of those groups.
Yeah, Chris, you have
I don't actually think I've heard Quasar say I want to be the representative yet. I think we've all just said, yeah, you do it. So maybe like, Quasar, do you want, if this is what we're going to do you want to be that representative and you're going to commit to the role? Excuse me.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. Okay, I don't object to the appointment idea. I don't object to being appointed. I will fill the role temporarily as it need be for the V4 elections. There will be drawback, that's a double-edged sword. Are we demonstrating governance? Are we making a decision by doing this And is this governance of the community or by the community for the community? I know some people are full believers that this needs to be voted on, but we don't have those voting parameters or things in place yet. So I will do it, but there's going to be controversy, and I'm okay with that. I think I'll let you know after.
Is there any controversy? No.
No.
Yeah, the only controversy I saw was that he had a hat on, and I was concerned he cut his hair. I'm just glad you're still there. Certainly, with regards to future state, if we're looking at subcircles and subcircles working together and switching in and switching out, I think there's going to be the concept of appointment. In general, it seems to kind of go align with that. So I think appointing becomes part of our future structure. I do think in general, we need to establish the bylaws of a circle because we don't have those. We were going to start with sort of a code of conduct, but potentially, for any group to coordinate, we do need some sort of rules of engagement. Not a lot of bureaucracy. It doesn't have to be a bureaucracy. We don't have to have specific things that we have to do, but at least roles that we will play to sort of hold the glue together. I'm certainly okay with appointments in general. There was a concept of a subcircle. Definitely, Quasar, you're big in this community. Most everything with the circle so far has had controversy in general, and so it's nothing new. But Nadia, I think it would certainly be under your purview to appoint somebody or a group of people that would take on this, and certainly you do work closely with certain folks. So I would certainly support your desire to make an appointment, or if you have recommendations, then we can select it. But you certainly would have that power to select your replacement. I think in the interim, right? So we've have lost definitely some air in the balloon in terms of what we're doing with Catalyst. And so we do, I think we have a window here to take some time to get this right. Ideally, we get it right for CCv4. And we still will continue as in the volunteer capacity, for the folks that want to participate in this until we get that new structure in place for CCv4. But ideally, we've brought some legitimacy to that new role. And I agree, we don't have a lot of bandwidth and time to do an emergency election at this point.
Thanks, sir. And yeah, I second that. I think the PA group sending an appointee is the greatest source of legitimacy rather than the circle choosing, because you're representing that group, and that group can, if they can decide who's appointed, I would totally be super happy with that. Joey.
So let me just ask a question to follow up to that. Sorry to interrupt, Joey. So if there's space for it, then if there's space for that to happen, then I probably would come away. The issues with this subcircle idea, I think, were primarily that people didn't want it to lack a rep, someone to fill that rep role. So I would probably proceed that way then, because there was receptivity to it. The pushback, I think, primarily was there was pushback in different directions, and controversy, as we said, is always an issue. So I would probably come back and say, here's what we're thinking. I would send it out to the group and say, does anyone want to fill these roles, and does anyone want to fill this role? The only challenge is we could, from my perspective, is you could compensate the subcircle for participation with that rapid funding, which I think is necessary, but you can't compensate the rep. So it's really it's a tough thing, but it's something everyone here is considering too. So it's like the most important to fill, but least incentivized role there for people who are volunteering to come to it. But I guess I just put all that on the table to say, I could take that back in a group and just ask the question. And if everyone's good with appointing and people come to consensus on that, then I would just send that person back and get them up to speed on stuff.
And just for clarity on the compensation part and the rapid funding, we did some investigation, and It turns out that some of the funds have already been used to compensate circle members working in subcircle situations. And we weren't 100% aware of that at the last meeting. So because there's precedent for that, we don't know how best to proceed. Do we claw it back? Do we not? And with the subcircles forming, the admin team position for stewarding the fund is that it's up to the subcircle. We're not going to make that call. And if they can defend their use of the funds to the community, then we're happy to do whatever. So that kind of opens up the door more to use those fundings as each subcircle sees fit. But that's another conversation. I don't want to derail this election conversation. So Joey and then Reese.
Yeah, so I don't know if Quasar is aware of this, but I believe our term goes until September 1st, if I'm correct. So the people who take that appointment should be willing to commit, that time frame. And I'm not opposed to even rotating a couple of people in and out if that's appropriate, and we can bring them up to speed on the priority board, et cetera, because I'm certainly going to have someone sit when I go on vacation. So I won't be thinking of the circle the whole vacation, hopefully. So I just wanted to kind of bring this time thing up. And I agree with you, Nori. We need to set a definitely dead date that, hey, we've got to have the election stuff nailed down by because if we're going to vacate the seat in September, then the elections need to occur. I don't know how many weeks ahead of that, so.
Reese.
I think, Nadia, you do whatever you feel is best. Get a replacement if you need to. Your community. That's who you're representing. Fill the gap. Yeah, if you are busy, if you've got other stuff to do, and there are people who are willing to take that position, then all the power to you. I feel Dimitri already brought in Quasar, like as a little sausage surprise for everyone, which I'm fine with. I'm happy to have Quasar here, but yeah, I feel like you just do what you need to do. If we need to, what we need to do is make a decision quickly and act on it, and then move on. So if that's what it takes, I trust you're going to find someone who's good enough to replace you. There's a standard that's been set, remember? So they got some big wellies to fill. But yeah, I think whatever it takes, I'm more than happy to just leave that up to you. And Nadia, I think you owe us some ADA as well, on a side note.
You think I what?
Sorry, Mercy. I think Mercy owes us some ADA. On a complete side note, I'm only joking. You're all right.
What about the rest?
So can I don't mean to make things uncomfortable. Can I clarify? If we distribute it among people who are going to take on subcircle positions, and one of those people is the rep role, can the rapid funding go to that person? If that is an offer, because I want to be clear, okay, if that's okay, then I will do that. But I'm not trying to.
Yes.
And that will be the case. That will be the case then for all of the circles can have the space to use that the same way.
Yeah, it's already happened, and if you can justify it and the funding can be made public to the community, that's fine. And then
okay, and then I would make that decision to offer that forward into the future also on behalf of that person, and then that would remove their ability to decide about the funding. But I think that would be an okay solution because it would solve this problem. So I'm just clarifying so I don't overstep. Thank you.
Felix and then Quasar.
And about the appointment, this is even fully in scope because as maybe you remember, I have to commit, maybe it was extremely pure communicated, but in the onboarding from Catalyst Circle version 3, the elected people, the CC admin team reached out to everybody and asked, hey, please set a replacement for you in case everything might happen. So it's fully in line with the whole thing even. And those who didn't, please do it. It's still an important topic and there's still some months ahead. So
yes, that's a good point. We've always encouraged all the reps to have seconds or thirds to represent them in meetings, especially so that we don't have an empty seat. This is just an extension of that and making it more permanent. I guess, until we have another election. Quasar.
I'm just going to repeat what was already said. It's important to have more than one person able to attend these and to have backups. So yeah, I agree.
Okay. Steering back to the next steps and action items, we have proposals we're doing after town hall to get ideas on how to do an election and to create a polis poll. Are those reasonable next steps? Do we have anything else we want to try? And we'll use Danny as a platform to broadcast both of those to as wide an audience as possible. I think after town hall gets a lot of face-to-face interactivity, polis will get a lot of inclusivity across time zones and countries and participation. I think it's a good mix.
If we look through Danny's fun slide that shows the event, all the events taking place, can we find a drop dead date that we absolutely have to have the election by at that point? I mean, if you bring that up, is there a date in there that we got to say that this has to be done by this date? So at least we can get that, and we can work backwards from there.
Okay, well, definitely add that as a third action item, is to come up with a timeline, working backwards from the drop dead date.
A quick suggestion for that, Nori, sorry to butt in, but I reckon that an appropriate time to do that is just before voting kicks off. Like, that's when we do it. Because if that's the first vote, then people are always present when voting kicks off. It's one of those deadlines that everyone knows about and everyone's excited to upvote and downvote each other. And I think that's the perfect time to capture the biggest participation. And so I think that's a really good time to do it. You know, it's an event, isn't it? It's voting starts, vote for Catalyst Circle. Like, I think that's the perfect time.
Okay. So just to clarify, you're advocating the election would start at the same time as Catalyst voting to get all that energy in one place. Okay.
What would be kind of really tasty and amazing, because you can shift really the governance focus much more. You can say it's not only about proposals, it's also about and adding more diversity to the voting process itself. So I think this is tasty.
Okay, Quasar.
Yeah, it's just left a sticky note there. We use Lido's 24-hour governance thon, the hackathon, or whatever, the Twitter-a-thon, to be pushing this as well. If he'll do it maybe the day before the deadline to vote. But yeah, that's a great idea, Reese. I'm with you 100%.
Could the campaign be open for that period of time, from just before until just before, perhaps?
I actually meant the start of voting, not the end, but maybe the end, because that gives us a little bit more of a time of a buffer to actually onboard new Catalyst Circle members. The 24-hour Lido thing is a good idea, but I think that's like the wrong side of voting.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
I agree.
I'll let you off, Quasar. You're new. You're okay.
No.
but one thing about Lido and Twitter, Circle is extremely poor in, let's say, outreach to the community somehow at the moment. And maybe it would be great to have some team up with Twitter Spaces or whatnot. There are a lot of initiatives already around. And Quasar, as you are already in Ada Cafe and with Lido Nation and everything, maybe you could set something up to say, hey, somehow, hey, try to reach also the folks on Twitter, because as we see on Ideas Game Catalyst, we are not really capturing their needs and challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's a great time to do it before Catalyst voting, but also push Circle voting before that, and also voter registration, because there's still a lot of trouble. A lot of people, that forget to register, have trouble, and I turn into a helpline, that week of voting because people can't get their app right or whatever it may be. So that's perfect. I agree, Felix. We can do Circle voting fest all together before the Govathon or whatever Lido calls it.
No, we need to renaming. All the fests just becomes ridiculous.
Yes. All right. Sounds like we have some action items to take away. Just to assign some names to things after town hall, who would be interested in hosting that or co-hosting? We have Felix. Anyone else?
The timeline's very tough for me, but I could probably give you like from 7 or 6. I can be available from 6, but only until 7:30. I need to leave at 7:30 because I got class, but I'm happy to be there for however long a period is allowed within that time, Felix.
I try to be there with you too.
Oh, Chris, could we check with Danny maybe for a town hall special edition? Half an hour town hall, more time for discussion. And we can.
I mean, it's feasible. I mean, we've never achieved a 30-minute town hall, but you know, that's it's not impossible, right? I mean, I think we just need to be, you know, very succinct on what the content for that day is, and maybe just drop some of the other stuff. Like maybe we say, hey, we're not going to have a circle update except for just to advocate for people coming to join the room, and that's it. And then, you know, whatever the proposal project closeout interviews or whatnot, just maybe, yeah, maybe knock that on the head for that week. We'll see. I'm sure it could be done. It just hasn't been done before.
I think 1 week, I think that's fine, isn't it? We give it a try for a week, use that as the perfect opportunity to really push this. And, you know, Chris, you know more about that, about what's achievable, but I think that's reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, you know, we can just strip out some of the sections that are sort of standing, right? If we as a circle agree that we won't have a proper update this week, and then we drop some of the other components, and, you know, Danny is on point just to run through where we are in the fund and we can get on with things. I don't see why not. In fact, you know, it could be a great gateway to bringing on a lot more people into the after town halls, right?
Yeah. So Felix, are you happy to run with it? And then anybody who wants to work with Felix can get in touch.
Yep. And Joey, let's reach out to the other town halls as well. So maybe we can coordinate it over Eastern Latam and Africa town halls. So.
Harris?
Yeah, so it looks like the start of voting for this fund is August 11th.
So August 10th will be the town hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you don't have to chase Danny for it. I've got his sort of spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So that gives us about 8 weeks.
It's a pretty decent campaign for anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's going to get us to feedback, and I may have missed part of the discussion, but how would we actually hold the vote? Did we decide on that?
We haven't. We have some options out there. Idea scale, some other kind of tool. Decouple it and do it to some kind of Jörmungandr.
Okay.
Thing.
All right.
And also the other option is for those circles that are strong enough, they can figure it out. And then like that might be a nice option is within each of your circles, decide, is your circle a strong enough community to give legitimacy to have your own election, however that's possible? Or do you need help from an institutional solution like idea scale? And would that be better? Because I know there are some communities, maybe like the toolmakers and maintainers, that don't have natural center of gravity, or SPOs are spread way too far to have that kind of consensus. And it would be better to have that kind of big formal vote or general aid holder, but maybe the CAs and the funded proposers have a stronger community that they can deal with it in some other way. But I think that still leads to at least some communities are going to need some kind of voting mechanism that we create that's a little bit better than a Google form. Joey and then Reese.
Yeah, if you look backwards, I think there was some controversy at one point in time when the challenges were set and then the circle decided to put a challenge in. But I think that was mainly because of communication. if we were to communicate with if we use ideal scale and we were to communicate properly, I don't think we would have the same problems going forward. So just make everybody aware of that.
Mhm.
I think I could get 10 times the amount of participation in voting by going through IOG's SPO meetup than what was involved in my voting that easily. So I think there are definitely ways I could rally the SPOs to at least form a better majority vote than what put me into position.
Nadia.
This may be like I don't know what kind of a suggestion this is when I make it, but IOG has the ability to contact CAs who've been registered as CAs in the past, right? Wouldn't maybe outside of the channel, is it something that if we put the content together that it could be sent to the CA, since the anonymity from the front end would be, we wouldn't compromise anonymity at all, but we would give them the news if they're not in one of those channels, and especially if they're not active around the time of the communication in those channels.
Yeah, potentially we could use it as a vehicle, but we just need to be careful with how we use it.
We have everyone's address. We could just send them an NFT invitation.
Yeah, it's quite expensive, but it's not a bad idea.
And actually put some metadata in the transaction this time. Apologies.
Okay. So how do we come to consensus on the actual election mechanisms? Do we need to have conversations amongst ourselves in the community and narrow that down, or can we work towards that in the 20 minutes we have left? How would you all like to proceed?
I certainly would like to maybe firm up and research a little more on bringing Jörmungandr to the table to use that as a mechanism.
Mhm.
Now it would obviously be decoupled from the upcoming fund, right? Because it would be too late to have it in idea scale. So we would have to decide that these are the candidates, this is the ballot, these are the tickets. We can load it into Jörmungandr and run it for a vote using the Catalyst app. So that could be a way to do it. Certainly moving forward, and certainly something I would like to keep it in consideration. But we will miss the boat on trying to do challenges and proposals, so that's off the table. So it'd either be a Jörmungandr solution or some alternative solution, and hopefully that is not, town hall voting the way we've done it in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to be prepared for both. Be prepared if you work on the Jörmungandr, so we know if that's possible and feasible. And then during this town hall with Felix, we can actually explore doing something in our own vertical.
Yeah, so ultimately we would need names, we would need seats, we would need a little bit of detail about each representative that would be on the ballot. And then we can kind of custom build it.
I think if you can find out how easy that is to implement, that would really give us the information we need, right, Harris? So if you're able to do that, I know you're not in a position to have homework right now, being ill, which, is fair enough. But if it's possible for you to get that information or find someone who can bring that information to the next town hall, then next town hall, what have you got me, guys? You guys saying stuff to the next meeting next week, then maybe we can have like an official discussion about it, like the possibility of actually implementing that for this term. And if not, don't worry, but we'll look to a different solution instead, and we'll think about doing it all internally. And I think in the meantime, if we can put out a broadcast to get some feedback from the community, use Danny, use Polis, then that's a good step forward as well as a fail-safe.
Chris.
Having been in Mike's role before Mike joined, Mike being the product owner for Jörmungandr, I think we need to recognise there's like a code freeze, as there's a point of no return for the voting app, and any new features will require not only design, development, and then testing. So I'm going to hedge my bets and say it's probably unrealistic in the next 8 weeks, because the code freeze will probably be in the next 2 weeks. That's my gut instincts, and obviously I haven't looked at Mike's backlog, or we haven't had that conversation, but that's how I would imagine it to be.
We certainly are interested in trying it as a pilot. That was kind of Mike's suggestion even. But what it means is that the voting might take place at a different time than regular voting. So it's truly decoupling it. But what that would mean is that we may have voting done and new things kicked off and no official circle yet.
Mm.
That's the implication.
Yeah, that's a bit of a risk, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
And look, it's okay if we just we go, all right, well, let's just sort it out ourselves. And then in the next iteration, we can have Jörmungandr in place, and it can be done, and it can be done properly, like we were saying earlier. And if that's the case, that's fine. We can scrap it together amongst our communities. We all have the potential to do that. We can all get that sorted out. So like that's it's okay if that's the situation, which I agree is probably most likely.
Yeah, it's creating engineer stress. Where we just
and IOG, you got a hard fork coming up in either 2 weeks or 4 weeks or something. so you got other stuff to worry about as well. Like he's probably busy with other things, right? Let's not give him too much work.
I think worst case, if we put the vote out to each of the communities to vote and figure it out, that would in itself be an improvement over how we did elections last time, and put legitimacy back into the communities that are selecting their representatives. If we can figure out a way to use Jörmungandr or whatever in the meantime, that just makes it better. So I think we're on a good path of conversation here.
I know I'm talking a lot this time, guys, and I apologize for that. You can mute me if you want, but ultimately Jörmungandr is just a way for us to do voting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's not how we're getting everyone together. So like we can, that's not the vote is a problem, but if we know we can implement that in the future, that's fine, right? But ultimately we still need to bring our community together to actually put someone to properly represent each of our respective communities, like actually properly, right? So I think any kind of iteration right now is good, and then we just know Jörmungandr is an easy solution that we can implement at some point, hopefully sooner than later.
That sounds fair.
That's good homework for each of the reps, is to have conversations with their community and say, what would a vote feel like it within your community that feels legitimate, and bring those ideas back.
So are the members okay with that? Joey, Quasar? Okay, cool. Others? Yeah, great. Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion, and getting representation from those various groups. Deciding what the groups are is also another wider question, but that's something we can decide. At some point as we are forming DREPs and things of that nature, there may be a seat for DREP organization as well. Something to consider. Challenge teams might be another one to consider as circles that support the process. Yeah, something to consider for the future. But we should keep it simple probably for this one.
Also, short reality check also regarding governance. It's important, but extremely unsexy topic. And a lot of people are simply not at all interested.
Not at all.
Right? Which
No one cares
sense.
until the decision's made. And then they're like, well, why did that happen?
Exactly.
Guys,
Exactly.
this is a simple fix. We're just going to make the challenge setting sexy governance, and then
Yeah,
yeah.
there we go. But yeah, the main thing is just important, I think, to mention to everybody here as well. Don't create this pressure for you as a circle rep to say, hey, as many people in the conversation as possible, because the most are simply not interested. Be fucking happy with those who show up and evaluate each individual and their input. Work with them who join, who show up.
It might be nice also in this, as the governance challenge gets written, we want to give scope and intent for what's there, but it's also a great educational space. Like, and I think sometimes we get real, this is something that can boil down very much to its basic. I always say, like, could my son who's 12 read this and understand it and be able to explain it back? I think just the word governance keeps a lot of people in catalyst from it, or it's a word that for people inspires certain resistance. So perhaps we can think about how to actually incorporate a little bit more, well, a little bit more of what makes it exciting for us to be like, why is everyone here doing this? Like, why are we involved in this process? That could come through a lot more and maybe would be more engaging for people to participate. Even the headline itself, how can we but the title of the challenge itself, even those things, how can we think about drawing people in to thinking about this as something that could be important to them, even if it's not yet. Right, that point is well taken, Felix. Sometimes it's like, no matter how exciting you make certain things sound, they're not going to be on my priority list of ways to spend my time and energy, and that's good. We need people doing all kinds of stuff in here.
Nadia. And I want to be mindful of time. I think we've had a really great conversation. We've made some good progress, have some action items, and we'll work on writing all that up. I think just looking back at the agenda, we've covered most of the topics in our kind of wandering kind of process here today, except for the opening up of CC calls. Do we still want to talk about that? I'm not sure who put that on as an agenda item.
I put it as an agenda item because the conversation, there was a discussion coming up on the Swarm Discord. And then I was a little triggered because I saw the situation already in Catalyst Circle version 1, where we have been the troublemaker and Governance Alive was there and we say, no, make the calls public, what the fuck, everything. And there was already a conversation around. But maybe it would be maybe interesting if we start already now to experiment some stuff. I'm fully aware to not experiment too much. Ah, that's very cool. Okay, better. Don't experiment too much. You don't want to kill yourself. But also say, hey, maybe we should really try some new formats, right? Why not opening up the call just to see what happens? See already who is interested to join. I don't think there would be more than, honestly, 7-8 people who would join. So I don't think it wouldn't be that much whatnot. But I think it would be an important message and an important experience for Circle simply to say, hey, how does it feel? Because it's somehow different if you're in a call just with the Circle members and the thing is recorded, or if the call is open and you can see, okay, in the chat, people can articulate themselves, communicate directly to the conversation which is happening. And it's not more from this perspective, I think it has not so much to do with auditability or transparency. It has much more to do with empowerment. Allow those people who are really interested to join, to come closer to the whole topic. Because these are exactly the people you want, right? Who take it serious, who want to engage, those who find government sexy, right? And by opening them up and inviting them, I think there can be a lot done.
Yes. Reese and then Nadia.
When I started live streaming, and I did have some pretty good participation for one call, and they brought up some questions which I relayed to you guys almost in real time, which was great, but that happened once. I think what will happen if we do open it up is, I don't like the transparency thing is necessary, because so many people don't like that decisions are made for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. I'd be the same, most likely. I'd be like, why is he making that decision? That's not right. The risk is that having people in the call, I think, would derail the conversation quite easily, when it's hard enough for us to come to a decision on stuff anyway, half the time in it. So I think it's not a bad idea, and having them live streamed from a Catalyst channel or something like that, I think would be great, and not on my channel, because that was one thing someone was saying, why is he doing it on his channel, you know, like which is fair enough, you know, like not that I was using it to promote myself or anything like that, but yeah, you get it. Maybe we could have them muted. Quasar, what you said about Twitter Space, I think is a bad idea, because people always try and come up in Twitter Spaces, and it's just really, it's a ball ache just dealing with it. I know from experience, it's a ball ache with it. It's not a bad idea for outreach, but I don't know if it would end up with a very good conversation, because you can't show the video, you can't show if we're dealing with like a nice little slideshow or anything like that. So yeah, maybe if we can have them permanently muted or something, maybe that is a good solution, Felix.
There are
yeah.
Zoom controls we can use similar to Town Hall, where only the co-hosts can unmute, and the circle members would all be co-hosts, and everyone else is camera off, but they can listen and participate in chat. That might be a good compromise. Nadia.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say initially with the mutes and the use of the tools. And we just are having a discussion about people being involved and excited about governance overall. So that the involve me and I'll learn piece might be really nice here. And I do think it should have some parameters and maybe some like guidelines, like we have the agenda. If people have stuff that they want, you know, you could make a space at the end for like community comments or things that could be thought about within reason. You know, we'd have to really think that through, but you'd want to not let it be a free for all of raising stuff here and there that you know, not derailing the meeting is really important too. And we definitely usually use those hours, but even for Subcircle to come and people who wanted to come and attend, that might be really helpful, especially if they're going to go and report other places, or if they have functions that they would want to report on that are specific to some of the sensitive issues. That might be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to jump back in again, but yeah, I agree. And actually, if we can have that in place, then why not, right? The only other thing that props up for me is I've seen in the town halls a lot of racism, sexism, just straight up abuse, trolling, all kinds of just bad times, like just things that are just not good for anyone happen in the chat. And so if we do that, let's just expect that stuff like that's going to happen, or is likely, whether it happens or not, so that we can all be prepared to be able to see some maybe slightly less than nice things in the chat, and just be prepared for it, so we can avoid it if necessary, or just, you know, put on our thick skin and our helmet.
Maybe an adherence to the code of conduct is an expectation of the meeting here. You know, we shouldn't let those conversations happen. I don't think like controversial stuff is one thing, but if you're being racist and sexist and all that, I don't think people who need to come to a meeting should have to deal with it. Yeah.
And yeah, like Felix said, CC admin could do a moderator function, but you'd all also be co-hosts. And I know I've been tempted to boot people from Town Hall for some of those comments. Harris and Joey.
Yeah, I definitely like the concept of you know, I don't know, YouTube's, you know, live stream kind of concept, where there can be content that's presented and then also comments that do come in. Certainly have to be ready for the troll box to happen in those cases. Agree. I do like the concept of, you know, maybe trying to bring it in as a Catalyst Circle sort of channel of sorts, right? You know, and you know, having it attached to that versus like, oh, I got to go over here and find it. I got to go over here and find it. Just bring it all together, that we're working on governance. If you're interested, jump in these channels and we're ready to go. So I like that concept a lot.
Awesome. Joey?
Yeah, I'm good with all that, but I just need to clarify something before we run out of time. Did we say that using the rapid funding is good for anyone who was on a subcircle and that's going to sit in the seat, like Quasar could be funded out of the rapid funding? And so that'd be one. And did we say that if Dimitri chooses to be on a subcircle, he can be funded? That's the second question.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that's clear, because if not, we're going to have some controversy over it.
Yes.
It does go against what we said previously, but I missed part of that discussion.
Yeah, after doing a little bit of research, the Treasury team kind of let us know that rapid funding funds have gone to subcircle members that are circle members. And that was an oversight that they didn't realize, and it kind of set precedents. And so our current plan is just to be really transparent about how the funds are being used, report that back to the community. And then just, if they can show return on intent, and this is being done properly, then we're not going to stop those plans from moving forward. So we're coming back from our other stance of you absolutely can't, to if you have a good plan, then okay, as long as you can explain it to the community.
So if Dimitri comes back with a solid way he's going to use the funds in the subcircle role, he or Nadia even, or Mercy even can fund themselves to be in the subcircle. And that's all good. And I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on it, so there's no controversy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quasar.
Nadia is still resigned, I believe. Some comments. Yeah, I want to be really clear on that as well. Whether or not Dimitri's request in is valid, or if it needs to be resubmitted. I don't want this to be an issue at all.
Yeah, so the current procedure is just to come up with a plan, let the Treasury team know. It's good form to let the rest of the circle know and let your communities know, because we will be reporting on how the funds are used. The process is not to release funds to the subcircle and then have them have their wallet disperse it. The thing is, you will put in invoices per se for work done, and then the Treasury team will send it to the appropriate wallets according to the plan that is put forward. So that's kind of how we've been doing it, and that's how we'll close it out. In future funds, we encourage every subcircle to create their own independent rapid funding mechanism, and then you all can deal with your subcircle funds however you see fit. And like the admin team wants to get out of that middle person kind of role, and we think that's more appropriate for each subcircle to have the sovereignty to raise the funds and use them as they see fit. And that could be to compensate your representative on the circle. Reese and then Felix.
Yeah, I think if that's the way everyone wants to deal with it, and that's the way, then that's fine. my issue with Dimitri, just while we're talking about it, wasn't that he was going to get funded or get paid. It was that he made it look like he was resigning and then only looking to pay himself to make a roadmap, you know, which didn't seem like a good use of the funds, especially not $14,000 or whatever it was going to be, you know. And that's why in the call I was suggesting that he pays someone else to do it and not take the money himself. If that's not what happens, I don't mind, right? I'm not gonna kick up a fuss or anything. And if that's the precedent that's set, then that seems fair that that's what we follow through on.
Felix and then Harris.
To this point, the whole problem simply appears. I think, because one thing is a very simple fact, and this IHK, I would love to push a conversation for this, because if you expect serious commitment and serious engagement, but the people who are in this process doing this all voluntarily and being out there in the public and receiving a whole lot of shitstorm and not even earning anything for it, you take them, you put them in the position a little bit and then leave them a little bit alone. And there isn't any security for them. And this creates a real pressure on them. This creates stress on them. And because of the stress, fucking weird situations appear and will happen. So also when you consider to say, for example, then, oh, okay, because Harris, you just mentioned before, okay, you think already about including Catalyst Circle members in the parameter change, but maybe also community as well. What you did with the DREPs, for example, was the first announcement, the first role in Catalyst where you can fully live from. The reality is $3,000 for one funding round makes you $9,000 per year. Who do you expect being full-time in a governance role? So when you set budgets, maybe include the community a little bit and check as well, what are their expectations? They might differ a lot from the expectations what IHK has to those roles. So, and I think this is really, really important, because the people now, we burn a lot of amazing good community members through the Catalyst Circle. When they leave, they are demotivated, they are fucking burned out, and they are most likely even a little bit less engaged maybe than before sometimes. And this has a lot to do with, yes, all this stuff. So would love to push for a conversation there.
All right, Paris.
Yeah, certainly. We need to find more ways to circulate feedback to the community and make sure that they're involved in the process. Ideally, we can find a way to do that in a rapid way for sure, so that processes don't drag on for months, and we're able to move forward and make improvements in a very iterative way constantly, right? So we want to find ways to do that for sure. So I agree. So certainly for the record, I would like to maybe understand what happened to Bullish Dumpling. And so you stepped into that role. Is that official? Let's put it on the slides. Let's make that happen. And then Quasar, will you be our representative moving forward? And Dimitri is now out. If we can clarify those roles and seats, maybe we're updating slides for town hall and make it official.
Yep, from Bullish, it was also announced on the CC Slack already. And I confirmed that, but yeah, definitely announcement, yes. Because for her was exactly the same. So it's also, hey, there's so much responsibility, there's so much stuff which is expected, but nothing in return, right? Because yeah, and yeah. So I'm stepping in. It's coordinated with Cardano Foundation. They asked me to step in for the next 3 months. And yeah, announcement will come from the foundation as well. Thing is, Tommy is on vacation right now. The guy who is a lot in responsibility of the whole thing, Jeremy, coming back soon. So still might take 1-2 weeks until there's an announcement, but yeah, will be done.
Wonderful. And certainly you've had a lot of great interactions with the CF directly. They were big part of consensus kind of together. So I've gotten to know that team pretty well. So we certainly can continue the discussion on the role of the CF in this seat. And yeah, anyway, but maybe Quasar, if you want to comment on Dimitri's position.
I'm okay updating it, but I believe it is, I'll run it by Dimitri. So just to make sure with the update to the changes and the rapid funding, just want to confirm with him and the other people that's okay. It's fine with me. Yes.
Yeah, and in general, we want to limit chaos as much as possible. Certainly across the board, we want to get stuff done and not bring a lot of chaos to the table, for sure.
Yeah, and to reinforce that as well, and to mention the roadmap, Reese, that that was Jeremy Furster's idea, was to build a catalyst roadmap. So that's where that idea came from. He shared it during one of the town halls. But yeah, does Catalyst have a roadmap? Do we need one? Where is Catalyst going? So
I agree, it's needed.
Chaotic.
Like we even spoke about it before, right, Quasar? Like when Dimitri first put that proposal in, we had a really good discussion about it, and I think we were on the same page with it as well. There's nothing against Dimitri. I like the guy. Every time I've spoken to him, we've had a really good conversation. But it just, yeah, you see how it looks from the outside, right? And we already had a lot of drama because of Dimitri. Not that he had done anything wrong. He was a victim of it, but we all suffered for it as well. So like, there's no right or wrong here. It's just like, the way he phrased it maybe just made it look like he was trying to pay himself, and I don't have a problem with people getting paid. We all need to get paid, right? We all need to eat, but yeah, it needs to be presented in a way that people will actually get on board with it, right? Rather than creating more opportunity for more drama that we ultimately have to deal with.
100%.
Just to wrap up our topic about opening up the CC calls, it sounds like there's general consensus that we should do that. Maybe we can start with an experiment of opening up the next one, making all of you co-hosts so that you can speak and unmic, and we'll just mute general participation and see how the chat goes. We may have to limit chat as well in the beginning and open it up towards the end or something. But if that's an experiment, that's okay. We can start that with the next meeting next week. And then, okay, we'll take Joey, Harris, and then Reese.
Yeah, just quickly, because I'm going to have to go too. I wish Nadia was still here, but I just wanted to go on record saying that Nadia exemplifies what I think a great circle person to represent their community has been. She has been exemplary in her leadership skills. She sensed, she went to her community, she gathered these people together, she heard hundreds and hundreds of comments, she collated those, and around that came another group of engaged community members that were creative, and together they created this process and also software to deal with trying to have a democratic process to figure out which one of those ideas and situations should rise to the top and come back to the priority board. And as well, they created a governance model and also a treasury that will help supplement when there's not the subcircle money. So, and they came up with a name event finally called Catalyst United. And I just wanted to reiterate that it gives validity to the circle, to the whole idea behind what IOG had for the circle, that you were able to, out of this circle, to catalyze this whole community that's going to be there, and they're going to help work on all these issues, because this is a human process. This is not a mechanical. All these proposals, every human being that looks at it has a different opinion, different idea. So there's always going to be changes there. And this Catalyst United group, I think, are just outstanding, the whole group. And Natalie.
Woo! Definitely really appreciate it.
Joey shed a tear then. That was beautiful, mate.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we're all in agreement of Nadia's ability to make things happen and be a tremendous contributor. So I definitely applaud Natalie's contributions for sure. Did want to say, there is a catalyst roadmap for sure from IOG's perspective, and there's definitely going to be a handoff to the community, and that's part of the transition plan to sort of move into parameter decisions sort of being made outside of IO. Certainly trying to drive in that direction. There's certainly, we want that involvement from the community, and certainly aligning a community-driven roadmap along with IO's roadmap, I think, is a tremendous approach to engage. So it's certainly something that we should talk more about. But there certainly is a roadmap for what we're doing, how it ties into Voltaire as well, and certainly something that we'll be sharing a lot more in the coming weeks. But just to put it out there, we do have a roadmap.
That's good to know.
Reese, and then we'll just start wrapping up with some closing remarks.
Yeah, I think opening up is a great idea. And I think, I'm being Quasar, I think having it live streamed directly from Catalyst is a better solution, because we can have the comment spaces open, we can broadcast to more places rather than having to share a link for everyone. They know they can just go and check that out on YouTube, or we can broadcast it to Twitter. So maybe I'll, as Quasar suggested in the chat, figure that out with him, and we can look for that being more of a permanent solution going forward. But definitely for the next meeting, I think we just open it up and let the carnage commence.
It's worth an experiment. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And while you're on the mic, Reese, do you have any closing remarks? Where you're at? How was the meeting?
Yeah, you know what? I think this was probably one of the most productive calls that we've had. It's been really, really good. I really appreciate you all. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to everything moving forward. Harris, I really hope you get better soon, mate. And yeah, that's it. That's it.
Nice. Thanks. Joey, and then Quasar.
Just for Felix, in my organization, when you do well, they give you one of these fancy little ties instead of a raise. So I'm hoping maybe Harris or Chris can come up with some hats for us or something when we do good, or JP could maybe send me one of his hats. So that's all I've got to say. Great meeting.
Thanks. Maybe an NFT. Quasar and then Felix.
I vote for everyone getting a sleeveless T-shirt personally. Yeah, great meeting. Thank you all for letting me join. It was a pleasure, and looking forward to the next to Fund 9 and Fund 10, and what we can do here with the circle. So thank you.
Thanks, Quasar. Felix and then Chris.
It's really happy from own perspective about Circle, from a little bit worried about, oh my God, but not shifting over to getting excited again, because see, hey, even if we have strong perspectives and positions sometimes, main goal is to figure out somehow a way to make it better for all. And that I definitely see move it in this direction, and therefore thanks for everyone. Beautiful meeting, beautiful call, definitely not waste the time, and happy for the next one.
Thanks, Chris, and then Harris.
Thanks, Felix and everybody. Really interesting to sit here, largely observing, understanding the dynamics of how you're working together. I second Reese's or Quasar's vote for sleeveless T-shirts, but I raise you tattoo on both arms. No, but in all honesty, like it's going to be a really interesting tenure for me. And I'm maybe it's been long overdue for me to sort of start observing these meetings. There's obviously a lot going on in the background. We've got a really exciting few months ahead of us. Do not discount the power of the milestone of Fund 10. That is an epic milestone. And so, you know, I hope that we can resolve some of the issues. It's never always going to be plain sailing. But, you know, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how we'll collaborate and what comes out of all these experiments. And yeah, thanks very much, guys. Look forward to the next one.
Can I put the tattoo in the rapid funding request?
I think I've got some old Disney transfers. I might stick one of them on for the next session.
I have some too.
Nice. Yeah, we definitely all have to get sleeveless T-shirts for sure. I think that'll help make governance look sexy for sure. Yeah, definitely delighted to be hanging out with all of you. Great ideas. You know, it's challenging, sort of trying to build governance with the door wide open, and you know, making sure that folks are included, and we really bring in all the different opinions together. So I think this ended up turning into an amazing meeting, and really appreciate everyone's time for being here and the love to try to make this process better. So really appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
I really appreciate all the passion and being able to come together and have some civilized conversations and really get some good progress. I think this was a really good meeting. So I appreciate all of you. And we'll send out some next steps based on our notes and our conversation from the admin team. And then we'll look forward to setting the agenda for next Thursday's circle meeting. All right.
Thanks,
Nori,
everyone.
And Nori, thanks a lot for
Thank you, Nori.
facilitating.
Thank you, Nori.
You're an amazing good facilitator, really.
Yep.
Really good, Nori. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here. All right.
Best of luck, Harris, as well. Are you going to be on the next meeting?
Get better, Harris.
Yeah, it may be some continued overlap, but
Okay.
we'll play it by ear for sure.
All right. Well, we'll have a proper send off next time then.
All right. Yeah, and I'm still working on that song to play. But yeah.
Thanks, man. That's actually what I was going to ask.
Yeah, no, you got it in my head, man, and now I gotta deliver. All right, we'll see you guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Here's everyone.